Let's bring in now Thoko Didiza. She, of course, is our Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. She is in Durban at the moment. Minister, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you've been getting an assessment on the farming community, but I just have to ask you, as a member of Cabinet, is government proactive enough ahead of these floods? We know that the National Disaster Plan for this year says that communities should be warned to evacuate ahead of floods, and we knew that these floods were coming. To your knowledge, were those warnings given out directly to vulnerable communities?
Thank you very much, Sally, and thanks to your listeners as well. Once again, it is important for all of us indeed to hold in our prayers those families and communities who have lost their loved ones as a result of these floods. And not just the loss of life, but also loss of livelihoods, particularly when one looks at the agricultural sector and in particular the small-scale producers and rural farmers and farm workers and farm dwellers. I agree with you that indeed this is the issue of the early warning systems, that we have been proactive as government. Weather forecasts have actually been used in communicating. I know, for instance, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, at every given time, they would communicate through the MEC for Kokta, MEC Shomuka, indicating to communities what we are picking up on the weather system and how the communities need to respond. But you would appreciate that in this type of flood that we've had in the recent past, it comes when KwaZulu-Natal has actually experienced heavy rains also in November and December, which they were still trying to grapple with. So the amount of water logging in the soil, which have actually had such devastation, I don't think anyone would have anticipated the enormity that this would have had in communities as well as in the agricultural sector, for instance.
I mean, surely that is the job of early warning, is to assess the current level of threat, which should have also been to look at what was happening on the ground. I don't personally recall any major calls for people to evacuate. I mean, you see it happen in other countries where people actually go door to door and say, please leave this area. Did anything like that happen?
Well, Sally, I think it is important to appreciate that it's a continuous learning curve for all of us as we contend with mitigation strategies on climate change. One of those being how we actually improve our communication infrastructure, particularly when there are looming disasters. So you're correct that we need to move beyond maybe using electronic media and community radios as part of communication, to also look at how we could use community structures and volunteers when such early warning system indicate that there is an impending disaster coming.
To your knowledge, was any call made, whether via radio, through any means of communication, to evacuate specific areas ahead of the flood last week?
Well, I don't think I would be in a better position to respond accurately on the question that you're asking, and I would advise Sally that MEC of Kokta, MEC Shomuka would be the person I'm sure would be able to give you an accurate indication in that regard.
All right, well, we'll certainly try and get him. We were hoping to get him last night, but we had connection problems. Let's now move on to your focus area. We know that there's been significant damage, not only to various farms and agriculture sectors, but also to the roads leading to and from those farms. Have you got a good idea of which sectors are hardest hit and how much damage has been caused?
As you know, Sally, this morning we had a meeting of the stakeholders that included farmers' organization, it included millers, particularly in the sugarcane industry, it included livestock, banana producers, milk producers, as well as farm dwellers, because these are the important stakeholders in the farming community. One of the things that came very clear from all the participants who were in that meeting is that even the figures that they are having are preliminary, given that some of the areas are inaccessible even now as we speak. We actually, out of that meeting, went to visit at least 2 areas in the Durban and surrounding. We went to eNCA. There were 2 bridges that were completely washed away. And communities, farming communities, have actually worked together to find an alternative so that they can be able to go out, get the feed for their animals, and make the operations to continue. In one farm, actually, a lot of land has been eroded, and what was a little stream is now a fully fledged, river, which was not there, in the lifetime of those who have been living in that area. They had never experienced as such. So that farm has not only had collapse of structures because they are on poultry, but it actually moved a lot of land mass. We also visited Cliffdale, some of the farmers who are farming in the valley there with, vegetables. Others are with the horses. Yeah. Apart from moving of some of those, you've got horses that can't be accessible because the bridge that goes to that area has completely been washed.
Minister, I mean, you're painting quite a devastating picture, and the natural question to ask you is, are we going to face food shortages? We already know about the concerns around fertilizers coming from war-torn Ukraine, wheat shortages potentially, and now this in the farming area of KwaZulu-Natal. Are we going to have food shortages in South Africa?
No. From the assessment that we've made thus far, we're not going to have food shortages. We have actually been monitoring the local situation in terms of food production. We are confident that we have enough. There might be in certain commodities where we may see prices going up because of the global network in terms of trade that South Africa is. And I want to thank Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister Godan, and Transnet, who have really assisted us in ensuring that the port is back on stream immediately. So in terms of the movement of agricultural goods for export and import, we are confident that we are actually able to manage. However, the access roads to farms, that's the immediate thing we have agreed we need to do, because some of the harvest, particularly some of the cane, is there. It needs to go to the mill, but you can't even get the haulage to get into those farms. Some of the livestock which need to go to the abattoirs are locked in because those farms. So what we are agreeing on with the industry is that the immediate intervention that we will have to work together collectively as government and the farming community is to fix those access roads into farms so that with no delay we can move food in as well as inputs into the farm for replanting.
Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Thoko Didiza, joining us from